I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and welcome to Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. Today, we ask the question, is social activism the new politic for America? Social activist Frank Meeink, once a white supremacist, has transformed his life. In California, he leads a movement to fight hate and racism, targeting police reform as an opportunity to heal America. Frank, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm honored to be on here. Just so people get how I became a neo-Nazi is, just not a good home life. It's a lot of people's story. And I was kicked out from mom's house to dad's house. There was a lot of drugs, alcohol involved. And of course, a kid's self-esteem and all that will probably be pretty bad when, you feel you're not wanted by either parent. And that's kind of how I felt growing up. And, I had this abusive stepfather in my life, and it just wasn't a pretty picture. And so about 13, I got moved up with my dad permanently in a different part of Philly. I'm a Philly guy. My mom was in South Philly. My dad was in Southwest Philly. Southwest Philly is a different than South Philly. Southwest was, kind of a bad neighborhood. And my dad lived up there and had a bar. And that's where he spent all his time. He had this little bar he ran. And anyway, I went to this all-black school when I was 13. I changed schools, went to an all-black school, and joined the sports teams and got along with some of my teammates. But after sports and during school, it just wasn't a safe place sometimes for a white kid. And there was only maybe 20 of us at the school. There's probably about 1,000 students, maybe, I don't know, maybe 500 students, or maybe 20 white kids, and not 20%. Just 20 of us. And I was a new kid in the middle of the school year, came in and was athletic, and sometimes guys didn't like that I was good at sports and all this other stuff. And I just had to fist fight a lot and got jumped a couple times and started running home from school and used to cut school all the time. And what's funny, I'll tell you a funny story. I used to cut school all the time, and I used to go down into Center City, Philly, and I used to go to Ben Franklin's house, right? And this is my life. So I used to sit outside because all the school trips would be coming in through his museum. His house is a museum. It's a beautiful, if you ever go to Philly, you have to go to his museum. And anyway, all the kids would come out the back door, and I would sneak in, and I go and I do all the exhibits, and I go see all the stuff. And I was like, learned everything about Ben Frank. I still to this day, he's one of my idols. But anyway, 2 years later, so when I used to cut school, 2 years later, or a year later, I go back to school, to a different school, and we're going to go to the Ben Franklin Museum for a class trip. So I'm telling everybody, I'm like, yo, I sneak in this place. I'm going to show you all the exhibits. I know all this stuff. I'm bragging. I sneak in there. I'm telling everybody. So we pull up in our big school bus to get out to go into Ben Franklin's house. I'd never been through the front door because I only snuck in the back door. Well, when you go into the front door, there's a big sign that says free admissions. And right. So what was funny is I once I found out I could just go in there, it wasn't as appealing. But anyway, that was typical life of me growing up. It was a rough neighborhood. And that summer, I got to get out of the city to go up to a cousin's house. He lived up in the Lancaster, Pennsylvania area. And if anyone doesn't know that area, it's all Amish, very Amish. My cousins weren't Amish. They were from South Philly. And there was other white people up there. It was like Amish and white people. And my cousin was up there, and he was a punk rocker the summer before I visited him. And we were kind of close. And the next summer I go up there, and he's in this neo-Nazi thing. And he has pictures of Hitler and Confederate flags in his wall in his room. And, all the things that I, as a kid, was told those were bad things. You know what I mean? Like Hitler, like my grandfather fought in the war. That. So, anyway, I remember talking to my cousin, and all these other neo-Nazis used to come over his house at night, that my aunt and uncle who were very, very good people. I want to stress that my aunt and uncle were very good people. They just thought we were going through a phase, or he was going through a phase, and they moved him out of the city, so they kind of just let him be. And but all these other neo-Nazis would come up at his house, and they'd climb up the balcony and come drink, and sometimes they brought a couple girls around, and they were like 15, they were like 16, 17-year-old guys. I was 13 going on 14. They were just cool to me, right? They had swastika tattoos, and they would say things like multiracial society doesn't work. I don't know what you're talking about. But I know when they start talking about blacks and whites not getting along, I'm like, dude, you have no idea. You have no idea. And my cousin would back me up. And I remember, just for whatever reason, I felt a little bit of pride that my cousin used to be like, yo, my cousin lives in a really rough neighborhood. You should talk to him. And I would tell them, like, what's it like and what school was like. And look, man, if I walked home from school to my parents' house, and I had a black eye or a trophy, my parents didn't say, "Oh, congratulations," or "Wow, how'd you get that? How'd you get that black eye?" They didn't have time for me. But when these guys were asking me, "What's it like going to school with black people?" it was someone asking me, "How's my life? How you doing?" Right? So now I would go out with these guys, and now I'm still a little skater, punk rocker kid, and these are all big shaved head Nazis, and we would go to these nightclubs, and they would meet up with other shaved head neo Nazis, and I would notice, man, how everyone feared them. And even when I was with them, like you would see a nightclub, like we would all get kicked out of the nightclub for fighting, and we'd all stay outside in the parking lot. And then the nightclub would let out, man, and no one would walk by us, and no one would go near them. And as sick it is, as sick as it sounds, I love that. Right up until that point in my life, I knew I was. I didn't know at the time. I was so scared of everything, And now people fear me. Like I feared my school, I feared my parents, I feared my step parents, I feared I was going to have enough food to eat. Now people fear me. Like I'm in.
We're going to take a short break. Can't wait to continue the story. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this.
The black truck? Hey, Christina from accounting.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, I used to date a girl named Christina.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then she dumped me for my best friend. You want to see some photos of them that I took?
I don't.
I thought we talked about this, buddy.
Buzzed and overshared again?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna call a car.
That's a smart idea.
So, yeah, I know, that's why I did it.
Hey, you're gonna get back to the top of the mountain.
Does that mean I'm gonna get back with Christina?
No.
Oh.
No.
Every second, 127 new devices connect to the internet. You can feel it happening. Our digital world expanding with every breath. We're entering a whole new era of connectivity, and MediaCom will be ready to power it with one of the nation's first 10G platforms. We'll be bringing you more speed, more capacity, more security, and the power to do more than you ever dreamed possible.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. I'm Peter Komendowski, and we're talking with Frank Meeink, whose journey through life has not exactly been typical, but it certainly has been transformational. Frank, keep the story rolling.
Yeah. So I get involved with this group. Now I'll tell you, there was like little thing like, again, when they would talk about multiracial society, I started getting that. Okay, yeah, we'll never get along, because that's what I felt in my heart. I mean, even though I was getting beat by my step parents, or not by but just my stepdad. My stepmom would never hit me, but there was this fear inside of me, and I finally get to join this group. And there was things like people used to say in my neighborhood, "Oh," even my uncles who were good people, but they would say like the neighborhood jokes, like, "Oh, I went to the store today, and Johnny tried to Jew me," blah blah blah, and everyone laughed. And I remember asking my uncle, like, "Yo, what's that mean? Like, why does everyone laugh when you say that?" And this when I was maybe 10. And he started to tell me, he goes, "Well, Frank, the Jews are kind of notorious for money." He's like, "You know what? You'll get the joke when you're older. It's a funny joke. You'll get it when you're older." Well, when I go to my first neo-Nazi rally, well, it's like a little bunker type place we all would meet. It was a little clubhouse. And anyway, I was there, and I remember these guys started talking about how, and we were learning how to hate through the Bible, by the way. But they started talking about how the Jews secretly funnel money off the Federal Reserve to give it to Israel. Now, I'm 14 years old at the time. I'm 48. I still don't know what the Federal Reserve is. You know, I do, but you know what I mean? So when they would say things like that, but when they start talking about the money and the Federal Reserve, I just remember going, sorry. I just remember thinking like, oh, this is my uncle's joke. Like, I must be old. I'm getting the joke. And I remember feeling older, knowing what my uncles knew. Anyhow, the fast forward through tons of violence. I become very active in this movement. I had my own TV show. I wound up traveling around, living in safe houses all around the country, living with the movement. Didn't go to high school. Didn't go to high school. Just lived with the movement all around the country, and even had my own TV show called The Right, which was on cable access back in the day before they had everything. It was just cable access, the Wayne's World type stuff, and always getting people into this. Like I was just very good at getting people into this. And anyhow, just to tell you that how extreme there was places where I was hanging in safe houses with men who talked about race war and talked about blowing up federal buildings and all that good stuff. And I remember, and I just want to tell people this, that if I was in one of those spots back then and someone said, Frank, here's the keys to the U-Haul, drive this to the federal building, I would have said, absolutely. That's how I was so involved. And I was so radicalized that I was like, I'll definitely do it, you know? Anyway, I wound up going to prison. I kidnapped an Antifa member, part of the anti-fascist movement guy, and kidnapped him. And then I went to prison for that. And I was 17 and wound up being in an adult maximum security prison in the state of Illinois. I was, in fact, at one time in the same prison with John Wayne Gacy. That's where they figured I belonged. And I probably did. I had a big swastika tattooed on my neck. I had tattoos all on my head, you know, just full on, just insane. And anyhow, in prison, I started to learn, and this is where people tie back American History X, just so everyone knows my story happened in 1993 and is very well documented. You know, I just started playing ball in prison because I was always an athlete. And when you played basketball with some of my Aryan guys, then most of them were bikers, not fun to play with. You know what I mean? They don't dribble basketballs or cradle footballs. They fix Harleys, and that's the truth. But some of the black kids who I kind of knew coming up through the county jail system started coming to the same state prison as me. And I just knew them from playing spades and killing time in the county jail together. So I seen a couple of them, and they started letting me play ball with them. And those guys just became cool with me. Like, it was a bunch of them. There was a bunch of guys. And then I played soccer with some of the Latino guys sometimes. And I was just kind of cool with everyone. My Aryans didn't think I was turning my back, and I didn't think I was turning my back neither. I was just doing prison time, and just was blessed. And I was blessed too in the fact that I went through prison not ever having to worry about the prison stuff you talk about, the men taking. I was very well protected. I was a famous neo-Nazi with a TV show on the outside. So when I got in there, my clique and crews took care of me. And I got along with all the Muslims because I could talk about Jews like it was nothing, like with them. So I just kind of got along with everybody. When I get released from prison, I try to go back to my I never left the neo. I was still fully involved when I left prison. And when I got back out, I was going to go back to running my crews and my cliques and doing all these things that I was doing. But man, I went back to Philly out of prison and trying to get a job with a big swastika on your neck and tattoos on your knuckles and aggravated kidnapping already on my permanent record. These ain't good people skills. So a guy came to me and I needed work. And a guy said, I can give you a job doing antique furniture. And I carrying down antique furniture for a weekend. And I said, I take the job. And my buddy goes, well, I can get you the job, but the guy who owns the company, he's a Jew. Do you want the job? Now I'm already having feelings about, like, I know that all black people ain't this way. And I know all Latino people aren't, because I really started feeling that. And I mean, I've really shared some intimate things with some of them dudes in prison. We were really kind of tight in a way. And anyhow, when I go work for this Jewish man, I work all weekend for him, pounding out the furniture, like taking it out to people's cars and getting tips. And I made like $600 in tips. And at the end of the time, he owes me $300. So at the end of this Sunday, when he came up to me, and I'm like, already had an argument, anti-Semitic argument in my head. Now, don't get me wrong. We all kind of do this, not have anti-Semitic things, but we all have them arguments in our head with our coworkers in our head before we get to work going, I'm going to tell today, this final day, I'm going to tell that guy off, you know? And I had that. And so when he came up to pay me, he's like, how much do I owe you? And I said, $300. And he said, oh, that's right, $300. I was waiting for him to say, no, I'm going to give you something less or whatever, you know? And he said, here's 1, 2, here's 3, here's $400. You're a really good worker. And then he asked me to come work for him full time. And I went and I worked for this man. And I'll just tell you this, man, I had problems where I would say things like, you know, I'm so stupid. And he used to say, stop saying you're stupid. You're one of the smartest people I know. And his one final day when I was sitting there, I was saying something about how I'm being stupid. And he said, Frank, smart people can fake being dumb, but dumb people can't fake being smart. You're just smart and accept it. And I remember getting out of that truck that day and going, I'm done. Like, here's another person God's putting in my life to say, who are you to judge my people, any people on my planet that who are you? And that was the day. I was like, I'm done with this.
Oh man, we're going to take a break. Powerful stuff. And hear about some of the good work you're doing now.
Yep.
And what you're doing to try and transform the world, because you've really transformed your life. See you all
Yep.
after the break. You don't want to miss this.
Today, more than ever, you need fast, reliable internet. At MediaCom, we want you to know you can count on us. Our fiber-powered 100% gigabit technology network was built for the future. We have enormous capacity and power, and 99.99% network reliability. So even though these are uncertain times, we're prepared. And you can be certain we'll keep your world connected.
Multiple studies have shown that marijuana can slow both driver reaction and response time, which can be really dangerous. He's here. He's here.
Wait. What?
I can't drive.
Why?
My.
Oh.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. We're talking with Frank Meeink from Los Angeles, California. Now, social change is a work in progress, but racism, profiling, and excessive force are on the national stage, and police reform is the center of attention, and Frank is definitely involved in trying to create some change in that area. Frank, tell us about what you're doing.
All right. So one of the things that we were told when we were neo-Nazis, and this was told to us, was that we should become military and should become cops. In fact, there was even a band called the Arresting Officers, which was a neo-Nazi band out of Philadelphia, out of one of my old crews, who were one was a cop, and they used to sing songs about kicking in the heads of Jews and starting a race war. Now, not all cops are this way. It's not like that. But the point is that there was a lot that did get in, right? And I testified in front of the United States, government about this because it was true. And I gave the names and said, see, they're there. And on top of that, we in this country have 34% of the world's women's prison population, and we're only 4.6% of the world population. We're supposed to be this country about freedom and liberty, and we're not. We're not. And especially for our black and brown and poor Americans, and it starts a lot with traffic stops. And we have to really redo the traffic stop scenario of America. We need to heal. See, in 300 years from now, we have to gather this and know this. In 300 years from now, we're all going to be one tribe. We're changing. And just in 50 years from now, the mixed race, and I know people get mad when you say race because they all say the human race, but let's talk real. The mixed race American is going to be absolutely prevalent. And 1 in 4 families in America are going to have Latino blood in it. That's a fact. And this isn't something because we're letting people in. This is if we closed all borders right now, this is still going to happen to us. It's still going to happen to us. So how do we get there? How do we get to the spot to go, we're all one tribe. We are one tribe. When we talk about real police reform, our government should never have the power because you didn't use a blinker to pull you out of your car, handcuff you, and then go through your stuff. That's not a freedom. That's not liberty. And if it doesn't happen to you, it happens to them. And my job has been now is to echo my fellow Black Americans. And I've been very active in this. And all I'm doing is echoing their voices like they've asked for us to do. Dismantling white supremacy isn't on them. It's on us to do it, right? They point it out. We go and look at it and say, let's see what we can fix, because we have to fix this. And one of the major ways is with police reform. What are we going to look back on? We look back on when the cops were beating people that were walking across the bridge to go vote and to get transportation and all the other things. We have to list every great Black leader. We just had Martin Luther King Day just the other day. If you listen to I Have a Dream speech, right after the whole I Have a Dream, let's hold hands, he talks about police brutality. Malcolm X, James Baldwin, Huey Newton, Fred Hampton. You just go down the list of all these great Black leaders, and they all had other little things, but they all consistently talked about police brutality. And we're still not listening. We're still not listening. There's obviously a huge mistrust between the people and police. That's why we really make them wear body cams now, because they've always escalate things. And when they pull people out of the cars, it's for their officer safety, but it's not. All these little rulings that have allowed them to do these things to us are rooted in white supremacy. The Pennsylvania versus Mims is rooted in white supremacy. The Terry v. Ohio these are rulings that have allowed them to do these things to us and are all rooted in white supremacy. It's about pulling them out of the cars so they don't hurt our white community. That's what not the founding fathers, that's what the court had ruled in the 60s and the 70s and making these rulings. And so we have to change this, because how embarrassing is it that we have 34% of the world's women's prison population in a country that's about freedom and liberty? If our founding fathers came back here right now, Ben Franklin, my guy, my dude, came back here right now and said, hey, how's this country we left you? How's the freedom and liberty we left you? Yeah, we got mass incarceration and the government can go through our stuff, which you gave us an amendment called the Fourth Amendment so that they couldn't do that, because that's what the redcoats did to us. But now, because it's patriotic, I got fireworks on my thing. Now, because it's patriotic to do that, like, people think it's patriotic to back the blue, and it's not. It's broken. And I'll say this real quick. In the activism world, which is growing and growing and growing, there are cop watchers everywhere now. There are auditors, First Amendment, Second Amendment auditors that go around. This has united the right, the left, and the center. We all back each other up. There's people that do phone whenever the police get out of hand in certain towns, and then the auditors put it out. We flood their phone with phone number. We just keep calling them. So it's about activism. The First Amendment is all about activism. It's not just freedom of speech. The First Amendment also includes freedom of the press, so we can report and get our cameras and record them. It also is the freedom of religion. I get to do this because I have a belief in God who doesn't want the poor being oppressed and put in prisons. The freedom to gather, to protest, and the freedom to have grievances against our government. And it's all about activism. And as long as you let us keep doing activism, you don't have terrorism. And that's what we got to keep with, that it's about activism.
Yeah, that's a great story. We're going to ask you to share some more wisdom, some inspiration for us after we come back from the break with your final comments. See you all then. You don't want to miss any of this.
Every second, 127 new devices connect to the internet. You can feel it happening. Our digital world expanding with every breath. We're entering a whole new era of connectivity, and MediaCom will be ready to power it with one of the nation's first 10G platforms. We'll be bringing you more speed, more capacity, more security, and the power to do more than you ever dreamed possible.
This is the internet that keeps the TV streaming, the meetings zooming, the playlist flowing, and the doorbell showing
Anybody home?
who's coming and going. This is the internet that powers the workout, that does the homework, that makes the lights work, that makes for light work, and makes
Don't forget to pick up Charlie.
your life work. This is the internet that keeps it all connected and has hundreds of people who ensure it's protected.
Nice try, hackers.
This is the internet voted best because it's extreme, nothing less.
Welcome back on Surviving Bad. Today, we're talking about police reform, social change, and the role of social activism in America. The fact of the matter is that most cops are good. Most people are good. It's the few bad ones that really make it difficult. And sometimes those problems explode beyond our recognition. Now we see some of the problems. Frank's one of the people working to fix it. Frank, tell us what you have to share with us.
Look, I love the scenario of there's just a few bad cops. We got to get away from that, because good cops watch bad cops be bad cops all the time. And it's been proven. And then when good cops do step up to do something about it, they get retaliated against, they get overlooked for promotions, and their union really looks down on it. And the FOP and a lot of those unions have made it so that we can't correct the problem. And that's where we need to really look at, is that they've made it so that we cannot correct these problems. It's us all standing together. This is where the healing is starting, right? I've seen some things now where a white woman in Loveland, Colorado, got her shoulder broken and dislocated by these cops. She was a 73-year-old woman with dementia, right? And that cop wound up getting fired and convicted. But when it first happened, Guess who stood up for this white woman named Karen? Black people. All of us. But it was tons of black people in there going, we're telling you, this is what's happening. This is what's wrong with our policing today. We have to, there's lobbyists involved. There's stuff that, is so powerful. And all these people want to talk about the deep state all the time, the deep state, the deep state. The deep state's right in front of us, man. It's the lobbyist system. And once we start to connect this thing with each other, that once we get our people into those positions in Congress and senators, we lose them. We lose them because of the lobbyist system. And so when we start to come together, that is the real deep state. And we really need to look at this together to make this country. Because look, Dr. Martin Luther King said it best. Our freedoms are entangled with one another forever, whether we like it or not. Whether we like it or not. So let's start making sure that everyone is treated equal, because they're not. Listen to me. They're not lying. All those great black leaders are not lying to us when they say this is the major problem for us. And look, just look at the traffic stop scenario. It's not supposed to be this way in this country. I understand we need to have traffic stops for speeding and all the other stuff, but I'm telling you, they look for any little reason, especially coming out of the metro areas, to pull black people over, to get them out of their cars, and they will do it in front of their kids, in front of their parents. They don't care. They will humiliate and dehumanize that man or person in front of it because they want to make sure they check the car. Where did this come from? This is not what our founding fathers envisioned. And since they broke that Fourth Amendment, and they have broke the Fourth Amendment with some of these rulings, it built mass incarceration. We have the receipts to tell you this is where it's happening, and we need to change it. We need to stick together and change this. And we have our right-wing constitutional brothers on our side here. It's all of us, because I'm not a lefty. I'm just real. And it's all starting to come together, that all of us are starting to speak up together.
Man, thank you so much for sharing an insight, especially with the credibility you have, where you've come from and what you see today and what you're sharing with us. Thank you for the work that you do, and thank you all for watching today. Check out our website at healthyiowa.org and keep your eye on MediaCom MC22 for our next episode of Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. On MediaCom MC22, your local programming leader.